Start with my greeting. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states and India. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Good late evening to my friends in Australia. Excuse me if I look a little bit pink. I went to the beach today and yesterday. I'm currently on the Gold Coast. If I look a little bit sleepy, it's 11 o'clock at night in Australia. So Ajahn invited me to join in a significant gathering of our Sangha in Australasia. As many of you know, earlier in the year I was in India and Nepal for 7 weeks. I've just been back in Thailand for a week or so, about 10 days, and Nepal said, no, you really should come, you have to come, this is historical, this is important. And so I came, and what it was the consecration of an repository hall, making the Sema ceremony, the boundary for what they call Sangha Karma, a place where monks can go forth in that monastery, in a place called Wilton, between Sydney and Wollongong in the state of New South Wales. So when Ajahn said, no, it's important, you should come, I asked him, well, what's going on exactly? And he explained that he had invited senior monks from the Ajahn Chah Sangha from the north, south, east, and west of Thailand, as many as he could. So there were about 60 Mahatera who joined on the occasion. And I am glad I came. It was inspiring. Most of these senior monks would usually have a few attendants, but on this occasion, because of airfares, etc., limited accommodation, most of these very senior monks, 30, 40, 50 rainy seasons, came alone with no attendants, and most of them were sleeping in a tent inside a big shed on kind of fake grass and sharing bathrooms, and it was very interesting to see how harmonious and humble and cheerful they were. A good number of them had actually never been overseas, so it was quite an adventure for them as well. And I had the fun opportunity to help lead them on an outing where we caught a ferry in Sydney Harbour, visited the Taronga Zoo, and monks got to see kangaroos and koalas, which is what they really wanted to see, and and the Sydney Opera House. It's a very interesting experience for myself on the ferry going under the Sydney Harbour Bridge and looking at the Opera House and having a memory of having been a young man in the city. When I was 19, I lived in Sydney, in the inner city, and I used to ride my bicycle over the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I used to go to swim in a swimming pool at Milson's Point. I do 40 laps of a 50-metre pool, 2 kilometres. I did that 3 times a week. And it was really interesting because it was like visiting a past life within the same life. And my body is maybe 1/10 as fit as it was then. It's amazing when you think how much energy a young body has. I used to ride to the other side of town, swim 2 kilometers, ride back to where I was staying and not feel tired. Some days I would ride my bike all the way to the beach and then swim in the beach and then ride all the way back. And that was just like something you do, and didn't think much of it at all. And but of course my mind was much more miserable in those days. So it was an interesting thing to see. Maybe 1/10 the level of fitness, maybe 10 times happier. So it's okay. I'll take the trade. I remember in those inner city streets wondering, what am I going to do with my life? Not wanting to work for a corporation, not wanting to work for government I didn't completely trust, not wanting to work to accumulate status symbols, and what am I going to do with my life? And there I was with Ajahn Lumpur Liam, and 60 senior monks from Thailand wandering around the streets of. We also went on alms round in Chinatown and what is now called Thai Town. There's a lot of little Thai grocery stores and Thai restaurants in the Haymarket area of Sydney. It's very interesting. And walking on this long line, I was about in the middle. It's very interesting being a member of the community of the elders, Theravada, the word of the elders. With 28 years of seniority, I was in the middle of the line. It's an interesting community that we live in because the older you get, you don't. I think in corporate life, you are often looking at younger people with new talents, new ideas, ambition, aggression. And in my community, the older you get, the more respected you are. So it's not a bad job, I suppose. You get old and wrinkly, it's okay. Yeah. So we had the ceremonies for, interestingly enough, when they do the ceremony, they have to clear the previous boundaries which may have been established under previous Buddhas. And then they make a new boundary. Ajahn Anan was a bit stressful for me because Ajahn Anan told me the day before, okay, we need to learn these lines. Actually, you and I would do the first ones doing the chanting tomorrow. I'm like, what? So of course I had to read them because I have an over 50s brain now. That's really embarrassing because it's like, oh, there's like 60 monks here and half of them know this. Like, why don't you get one of them to do it? Well, no, it has to be you. You were born in Australia, he said. It has to be. All right. And then the next day he says, oh, by the way, the first ordination ceremony, you also have to join in the chanting for that as well. So it it hasn't been just a holiday. It's been a bit stressful. And, this is the thing about having a teacher, a master. Is keeps you on your toes and keeps making sure you do things, won't get you let you get too comfortable. And I said to him, if you want this to be inspiring, I can sit straight for hours. Why don't you get me to lead a meditation? I can chant very nicely. Get me to lead. I can give a Dhamma talk. Why are you going to make me do the chanting for the Vinaya Karma? It's like more than half of these guys would be more inspiring. Said, no. It's not. That's not the point. The point is, you were born in Australia. This is an ordination hall in Australia. You have to do it. So anyway, yeah, it would have been nice to have a little bit more time to prepare. But anyway, and we went to. So I asked him, why do you? I wasn't doubting. I wasn't finding fault. I just wanted to understand, like, why bring 60 plus the monks that were there? So it added up to 80. Why do we need 80 monks on this occasion? Knowing that feeding everyone would be difficult, accommodating everyone would be difficult. And he said some very interesting things. The merit and the barami of the Buddhas and the merit and the barami of the Bodhisattvas, they've spent millions of lives cultivating karmic connection with billions of beings. But he said the barami of Lumpur Man and Lumpur Cha, it's more specific. There'll be certain people that have karmic connections with that. And he said, so if a lot of the monks that actually lived and studied with Ajahn Chah come together in the same place, when he makes a kind of an invocation to invite the blessings and the merit of Lumpur Man and Lumpur Cha to come, it's more likely to come. And so after the ceremony, I asked him, Ajahn, did the Baramis come? And he said, yeah, it did. A lot of the blessings from Lumpur Cha and Lumpur Man came. And if monks have abilities, those blessings can be directed into the hall, into the earth around the hall, into statues, various things. And if you imagine kind of samsara as being dark, which it is, dark with greed, hatred, and ignorance, and if you understand the Buddha Dhamma, Bodhisattva as being light, it's like the brighter and lighter these spaces can be made, then the more likely it is that somebody surrounded by darkness will be able to find it. So it's essentially brightening up on the psychic level the monastery and bringing in as many blessings as possible, particularly for people who will be able to practice with, resonate with, and live within the community of Lumpur Man and Lumpur Cha. that they will be able to find the training situation. So that was very auspicious. We also went to the Blue Mountains, and we went to see a famous site called the Three Sisters. And an interesting thing happened. We sat in the car, of course, for 2 hours, and we got there, and it was just cold and wet and misty and windy. And so we made all this effort to get up this mountain, and basically there was no view, and everyone got wet and cold. And so the two buses of monks went back down the hill, and Ajahn and Nani said to me, "Ajahn Achalo, let's go and have a coffee, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes and see if we can clear these clouds." So it turns out that the Nagas were so happy, these were waterborne Nagas, were so happy to see so many virtuous people that they had come very close to them, and the waterborne Nagas apparently have to depend upon water. So the Nagas didn't actually know that the monks were coming to see the view. And they all came to say hi and completely obscured the view. So Ajahn and Nan had to talk to them and say, "Could you please step back now and clear the clouds and let us see the view?" So we came back 10 minutes later, and the clouds around the Three Sisters were all gone, and we were able to see the view, and at least we took a picture. I always had to share with the other monks. And it was very interesting because this wind was, Ajahn and Nan has certain abilities, and sometimes it's just really obvious. And so we went back, and the view was there, but the wind was really, really strong. Our robes were like fluttering, like, Superman, Spider-Man, Batman. It was like kind of cool in a way. And he said, but it was cold. And he said, "Just wait, 1 second. And the wind just completely stopped. And it was really obvious that he was like, by that stage directing the orchestra. It was like, blow away the clouds. Okay, now stop the wind. Really cool to see. And at first, I wasn't going to visit my family because I was like, no, I've been in India for 7 weeks. I need to get back to my monastery. And I'm going to see my mum, and I also need to see my brother. If I see my brother, I also need to see my sister. I go on and on. And of course, once I got here, you can't come to Australia and not see your mum. You have to see your mum. So here I am, spending time with mum. And in the coming days, I spent time with my sister and my brother. A bit of an update. And, very nice to go back to the beach. It's an interesting karma. We all have an interesting collection of good and bad karma, I guess. But when I was growing up in a place called Ocean Shores, northern New South Wales, my twin brother, my younger brother, and I used to ride our BMX bikes to a beach called New Brighton Beach, and very beautiful beach on the Pacific Ocean. And 9 times out of 10, we would get that beach to ourselves. It's just kind of like a private beach as our childhood playground, and it's very, very beautiful beach. So I went back there, and I think I looked back at it at the beginning of my meditation experience, which was lying on the beach as a young boy, listening to the waves and just finding that space within which the vast expanse of water and noise is occurring in the movement and the wind. And oftentimes just waiting for my sisters to finish sunbaking seemed to take forever, so I would just lie on the beach towel and just wait. And the mind would find quite a peaceful space. So going back there again and seeing just how expansive it is, and having grown up in northern New South Wales, it kind of ruined my inner thermometer. It was today, for example, it was 23 degrees, 70% humidity, a gentle breeze, and so for me, that's what weather should be, because it's like that for 8 months a year. About 24, about 70% humidity, a gentle breeze, not too much rain, not too much wind. But of course, wherever else you go in the world, it's not like that. So it goes somewhere, it's too hot, it's too cold. Like, yeah, the weather really is nice. And the blue skies. In Thailand, we don't often see really blue skies, literally just a few days a year. Something about when you have over 80 or 90% humidity, it kind of gets bleached out a bit. It becomes a bit hazy and white. But in Australia, just have beautiful, beautiful blue skies and the deep blue ocean. So yeah, if you ask me when I'm in Thailand, do I miss anything in Australia? It's the beach and the sky. So I've been enjoying that. It's been nice to reconnect with the beach and the sky. Anyway, enough musings about what I've been doing. We have some questions.
Yeah, Rajan, question one, Dear Ajahn. I recently watched a documentary on cryogenics in America. Rich people are having their bodies frozen immediately after death, in the hope that one day there will be the technology to restore their life and health. I was especially interested that a Buddhist family had their young daughter's body frozen after dismissed due to a brain tumor. Please comment on this procedure from a karmic perspective, or is this just a big business scam? Thank you.
Western kind of scientific theory and medical theory tends to come from an assumption that consciousness exists because of the body. And I guess there's a whole bunch of things that can be extrapolated if one believes that. But if the body's use can be restored, maybe consciousness can be reignited or refreshed, restarted. Buddhism and Eastern traditions in general probably come from a different assumption. We would assume that the mind comes first and the body is a consequence of previous actions, previous lives. But if a person gets it, like as we understand in Buddhism, the body is one thing and the mind is another. And they come and they exist together for a period of time because depending on the kind of karma that you have. So if you have human birth karma, your consciousness, your mind gets incarnated, reborn into a form body made of the four elements. And for that period of time, the mind and the body are in the same space and they are very close. Even so, they are separate. So a good way to understand this is I was talking with a lady today who was with her husband when he died. And she said she just felt the moment his mind left. And she looked at him and she knew it was no longer him. It might have been a thing, anything. But and my sister and my brother were holding the hand of my other sister when she passed away last year. And they both felt a kind of a whoosh, like a wind, upward wind. And Kate said to Diane, "Did you feel that?" And Diane said, "Yeah, she's gone." So they were both there the moment that the mind left the body, and they both felt the movement of that. So, but if a person before they die develops an attachment to being able to come back into that body, then it is possible that the mind could hover around that body waiting for that day. It is possible. It's probably not the best choice. It would be a better choice to go on to whatever's next. But what is also interesting is suppose eventually they are able to kind of reverse age cells and rejuvenate a human body organism to be younger, and then try to reignite consciousness back. What's to stop a wandering consciousness that you might call a ghost from just popping in instead? It's like there's a vehicle now that's available, usable. There's a being that's been kind of wandering around a bit lost, wanting a less miserable experience. What's to stop that consciousness from popping into that body? How do you know that the mind that will come in will be your dear dad or your dear daughter? So, yeah, there's a lot of risks. And I was once attending the Dalai Lama's teachings, and he was actually talking about the development of robotics or cyborgs and things, and this assumption that if they one day maybe AI will become sentient, or maybe one day robots will become conscious. And the Dalai Lama said probably what would be more likely the case is that if that form became something that consciousness could inhabit, a being will be reborn into it. But the people observing it won't know that. They'll just be thinking, look, we created consciousness. We created the form and consciousness manifested, but they won't be able to see that actually consciousness from a previous birth comes into that and then exists as some kind of a sentient cyborg. So anyway, is it just a scam? I suspect these people are sincere. I suspect that they are really are committed to this, at least some of them. Uh, for myself, I'm not sure how many more births I want to have if the world is full of robots and cyborgs and automated drones and total surveillance. I think it might be time to, check out a different realm or a different world where one can practice Buddha Dhamma with less, more traditionally. You know, yeah, I won't mention virtual reality and sex robots. I'll just say that much. But dangers coming towards us.
Question to Dear Ajahn, may I know what is the right intention when aspiring to participate in a 3 steps 1 bow ceremony on the eve of Vesak in one of the monasteries? I plan to experience for myself what it will be like and hope that it may increase my mental perseverance. Also, does the 3 steps 1 bow practice effectively reduce one's karmic debts or help to repay one's parents' kindness, wishing them longevity and good health? Thank you.
When we do a practice like 3 steps 1 bow, it's similar to when we bow in the Theravada when we do our chanting, Arahang Samma and bow, but it's more energetic because it requires bowing from a standing position to a going all the way down to the ground, and oftentimes it's many hundreds of times. So essentially, what one is demonstrating mostly in that activity is faith and respect. Now, faith and respect for Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and but there are various other ways one can engage that practice. It's a very beautiful practice, and I've done quite a bit of it. If you're looking at the 5 spiritual powers, faith is the first. So, and the Buddha says that these 5 qualities, when made much of, cultivated, lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. So faith is potentially a very, very powerful thing, and is a very important thing. So for many modern people, it's a bit cerebral. And if you go to the Ajahn Chah monastery 20 years ago on a full moon of Kokota day and listen to the evening chanting, when the old village ladies were chanting it with all of their faith, it really, you could really feel how much heart there is, how much love there is, how much devotion there is. This was no cerebral, heady faith. This was a full-hearted love for the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so a practice like 3 steps 1 bow is a way to embody the faith, invigorate the faith, nourish the faith, and really feel it. It gets you out of your head and into your body, and it gets you into your heart. And it's a kind of repetition. We become familiar with things through repetition. And so when we're doing it, 3 steps, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, bow, and you just put your head on the ground and say, I really respect the free doing. I really respect the free doing. And bringing to mind the example of the Buddha. And so some people are visualizing, they do their 3 steps and they stop. They visualize the Buddha in front of them. Bow. You can do 1 bow to Buddha, 1 bow to Dhamma, 1 bow to Sangha. So you're doing the 3 steps and you think of the Dhamma, like which teaching resonated with you most, which teaching really helped you establish more well-being, more sense of confidence, the direction that you're going in samsara to heaven and beyond. What are you grateful for about the Dharma and Vinaya, the training, the teaching and the training? And then Sangha, 1, 2, 3, which teachers, which biographies, which great masters have really touched you, have been inspiring examples that you can bring to mind. Sariputta, Moggallana, the foremost beginnings, Lumpur, Shu Yin, Masawa, whoever it is, bring to mind, and then deeply bow with true love and respect. And it's a very interesting practice because you're outdoors often and you're experiencing movement and you're seeing visual, but normally people know not to talk to you when you're doing it. So it's also a very intimate and very private activity. And if you do it repeatedly, it becomes a very. For some of the places I've done 3 steps, 1 bow is one place is up Vulture's Peak Mountain in Rajgir. It's just thinking of Lord Buddha doing his periods of retreat up there, teaching the devas 2 hours every night, Indra becoming a stream enter and listening to the Buddha in the Rajgir area. Sariputta and Moggallana meeting the Buddha in the bamboo grove, and Ananda, you know, so Sariputta becoming an Arahant up there, and just thinking of the Buddha and the Aryan Devas and the Aryan Sangha coming down that same hill and just going up before dawn and thinking of the Buddha's footsteps that very, it'll be very rapturous and very peaceful and very kind of, it can really kind of bringing that faith to be fully uh, present in the heart, but then also become quite powerful and expansive. Now, this also, I've also done it up some holy mountains in China, and I've done it twice. I made a vow to do it a third time, so I have to go back there and do it one more time. It was about 600 vows, I think, and 1800. Did it with a group. I'm looking at a few people on my screen now. We did this together a few years ago. And, Wu Tai-san did it last year. And try to do at my monastery on the big full moons and the new moons, twice a month from the monastery sign to the chetty. So it's an ongoing practice for myself. Now the thing is, making your mind consciously bright with a wholesome mind state does also produce merit. And then that merit can be dedicated. And so there's all sorts of things you can do when you know your mind is bright with merit. If you can then make aspirations due to this merit, make your aspiration. I share this merit with my mother, my father, my teachers. And so one can do it as a kind of a merit generating exercise, and then one has merit to share. And that also is a very brightening and uplifting. And curiously enough, even though the mind becomes brighter and more expansive and the faith becomes more kind of fully embodied, it's also humbling. This natural, the act of bowing, putting your head and your face on the dirt, on the earth, it has a humbling effect on the mind. And it's really beautiful to experience true humility. When we think of how wonderful the Buddha was. You don't have to reject yourself. You don't have to compare it and say you're not enough. That's not what I'm talking about. It's not penance. It's not repentance. Although it can be. Some people do a bowing practice as a kind of a repentance. That also can be wholesome if it's done skillfully, the right understanding. But it's more like the joy of recognizing how awesome the Buddha is, how incredible the Sangha is, and how blessed we are to have met it, and then truly being humbled by, the grace of that. It's very beautiful. And so, yeah, I enjoy it as an ongoing practice. And one can also do one's favorite mantra while doing the bowing. And there's another way that the Tibetans do it when they put their hands above their head at the throat and at the heart. They're apparently aspiring to purify body, speech, and mind, and also to develop the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha, because they're Bodhisattva practitioners. So they're bowing with the aspiration to realize mind, speech, and body of a Buddha. So there's various things that one can do with the practice. And I hope that answers your question.
Question 3, Dear Ajahn, thank you for all your teachings. Life does not always go as one intended, and not everyone gets the right guidance at the time. Please comment on a person who, when she was young, decided to have an abortion. Even after daily Vajrasatva purifications, she still feels intense regret and guilt. Thank you.
So in the modern world, many people do have abortion. And I've I've heard many women over the years describe a similar experience to me. And obviously in the modern world, most young women in a modern context will feel that they need to work and become somewhat financially secure before they would want to be responsible for another human being. And oftentimes a decision is made, obviously the pregnancy wasn't planned, and oftentimes a decision is made because the person feels that they're not truly ready to take care of this other being, because that's a huge responsibility. And so even though that's fair enough, it is interesting that these people still feel remorse. So something's going on there. And what I think it is the consciousness of a human being. So even if in Buddhism we believe that chitta, the consciousness, the mind of the being that's comes in quite early. So there will be some awareness. If a woman is empathic and intuitively connected, there will be some kind of, many women talk about that, a sense of connection with the baby, even when it's inside, from quite early. And because a consciousness that has to have a certain amount of development and a certain amount of merit to be able to get into that situation. So I think what the issue is if one terminates that deliberately, consciously, intentionally, one has made karma with a being with significant consciousness and significant merit. Now, of course, that being is also having to resolve some karma in that it landed in a womb where it was going to be terminated. Quite possibly that being needs to experience a very short lifespan to kind of work through some karma. So Lord Buddha says that killing many beings, causes one's lifespan to be short. It's quite possible that the mind that's coming into the womb is part of its karma, that it will be terminated quite quickly. But the fact that women who have abortions, not everybody, we're talking about a woman who has done this, who feels the remorse. Yeah, I think it's related to the fact that an intuitive, empathic, connected person could feel this consciousness inside oneself and decided to remove it. And because it's not without some consequence. I think it's really important to forgive oneself. And I think that's a big part of it. It's like, yeah, I really wasn't ready. I did the best I could with the understanding that I had, and I forgive myself. I think that's something one has to really decide to do and do it sincerely, as well as forgiving oneself. I remember Dear Achalo was saying, yeah, it's karma to have an abortion, but it is also karma to bring a being into the world that you're not capable of taking care of, and it's karma to have another being in the world that you don't take care of. That also creates karma. So it's like people oftentimes make the best choice that they can with the circumstances that they have. Another thing we can do, as well as reflecting on the karma of that being, sincerely forgiving oneself, then one does actually consciously produce merit and dedicate it to that being. And that can be very helpful, because what happens is if you do a lot of that, suppose you make donations for Fatima, one of your favorite monasteries, or support a charity, your favorite charity, and you support an orphanage, or whatever, various things that we can do. Women's clinic, and then if you do it enough, what happens is when you think of that being, the other files that are going to come up is all this merit that you made in their name and all the merit that you dedicated. So it's not just a feeling of remorse, it's also a feeling of that unfortunate occurrence was the cause for a lot of skillful, conscious, deliberately wholesome activity. And then one I would assume that when one thinks of the occasion, there is also some happiness and joy about the good karma that one made and dedicated. So, yeah.
Question for Dear Achalo. I'm told that there is an inner court and an outer court in Tusita Heaven. Apparently, devas dwell in the outer court. where it is easy for one to be distracted by a multitude of sensual pleasures. Or Maitreya Bodhisattva and the Buddhist sages dwell in an inner court. When we make an aspiration to be reborn into Tusita Heaven, do we have to be very specific and ask to be born in the inner court? I hope to be reborn in the correct place. Thank you.
Sorry, I've been chuckling to myself here. So I think in the Mahayana they talk about the Sukawati, in Tibet they talk about devas, and Lumpur Anand assures me that it is Tushita Heaven. Bodhisattva's mandalas are. It correlates with Tushita Heaven in the Theravada cosmology. It's, as far as I'm aware, or as far as I've heard, it's the Dharvatinsa Heaven. You need to understand that the heavens is like another world. The Buddha talks about in the Sutta, there is this world and there is the other world. It's like the heaven world. And so I think the Dharvatinsa devas can be aware of the Tushita devas. Similarly, the Tushita devas can be aware of the Dharvatinsa devas. And so Lord Buddha, when he taught his mother, who became a Tushita deva, when he spent one rainy season retreat in the heaven teaching Abhidharma, apparently, he taught from Dharvatinsa, and the Tushita devas came down and listened. And the reason he taught in Dharvatinsa was so that all of the beings in the Chatu Maharaja could listen, and the beings in Dharvatinsa could listen, and the beings in Tushita could also come down and listen. So the place where there is sensuality and distraction is Dharvatinsa, apparently, the heaven of the 33, where Sakadeva Raja is the king. Now, the reason there is a lot of sensuality and distraction is because it's actually the result of merit. Because beings made a lot of good karma, then they have access to more pleasant sights, more pleasant sounds, more pleasant tastes, more pleasant feelings than even in the human realm. So it's actually the result of good karma. But the problem is, it's people are obsessed even in this world with sight, sounds, taste, touch, right? So imagine you have even more refined, more beautiful sight, sound, taste, touch. Then there's some danger for getting absorbed and distracted. So, but as far as I'm aware, in Tushita, it's literally called the heaven of the contented. So if a person has enough merit to be born in Tushita, they are. I don't think those are the ones who are going to be distracted, and you will also people be surrounded by a lot of good examples. So yeah, I think when making that aspiration, may I be born into Tushita Heaven in the midst of, Maitreya Bodhisattva and well-practiced beings, then yeah, you can. Lumpur Anand did say that it's not that easy to be born into Tushita, and for most lay people, he said probably the most likely would be born in the Yama Deva realm, which is one lower than Tushita. And apparently the Yama Deva is a place where devas who like to spend time alone and who like to chant are born there. But this is and I think they have their own little shrine on a nice wispy wafty cloud, a beautiful cobalt blue sky or whatever. So, and they can visit each other if they want. So one aspires for Tushita to be born in the presence of Maitreya Bodhisattva or whatever your aspiration is. And sometimes you might not make it there, but you might make it just below and somewhere between Dharvatinsa and Tushita. And I think the thing that's going to make you not get distracted and be focused is being not distracted and focused in this life. You need to basically have good habits, because you will carry your habit with you. And if you want to be born as a Yama Deva, then take some sessions of chanting alone and chant for longer. And I still think it's good to aspire to be born in Tushita, and particularly because this realm is degenerating quite rapidly, unfortunately. And if one gets born in Yama, it's okay. One of my teachers told me that I would want the Dharvatinsa Deva that could get a day pass to Tushita. So it is possible that I didn't have permanent residency, but I did visit some of my friends in Tushita Heaven. And I think that teacher was one of my friends in that past life. So there is some porousness between the realms. So Darwin thinks the devas can visit Tushita Heaven. Tushita devas can come down and say hi to their friends in Dalatusa. So, so, yeah, and if you have good, wise Kalyanamitas and you aspire to be born in their presence, that will increase the chances that you will be able to see each other there. I believe so. But you need your good, strong, steady habits this lifetime. Then you will carry on your habits in your next lifetime. You want to be the type of person that never misses their chanting, never misses their meditation. Or if they do, quickly make up for it, re-establish your habits. Then you will be born in the presence of those types of people. Now, if you are the type of person that is always not doing your chanting or always not doing your meditation because you have to go to another dinner or another graduation or another engagement or another wedding or another funeral or another New Year's, well, you are the one that is going to be born with the distracted devas. That's because that's the habit that you're cultivating. And there's nothing I can do to help you other than admonish you, tell you to get it together. Get your priorities straight. I'm teasing my Malaysian students there.
Question 5, Dear Ajahn, when dealing with negative memories of past experiences, is it better to try to process them for healing or to ignore them and just focus on practice and study? Can unprocessed memories or personal narratives still affect the practice, for example, of meditation? Thank you.
Good question. In my experience of meditation, sometimes when a traumatic memory or an emotion arises, sometimes it just needs to be given its space and one bring mindfulness and loving kindness. And we're still trying to be aware of the breath, but there is this emotion associated with a memory. I think what happens in childhood is if it's not a safe environment for us to express our emotions, or if there's some trauma, it gets kind of squashed down, and the mind will then release trauma, emotional baggage or emotional memories when it's safe enough to. A lot of people seek out therapy to do that, but if the person is meditating well, particularly in the first few years, some repressed emotions do arise in the mind. And I think it's okay to give them some space, but one has to then, also notice the change and notice the cessation. So we're still applying our mindfulness and wisdom, and we're dealing with these things with mindfulness and loving kindness. And when I was a young boy living in this area, 40 years ago, 45 years ago, there was a big recession, and interest rates went from 4 to, I think, 18%. And unfortunately, my parents were not able to make their housing payments. And because a shift from 4 to 18% within 1 year is really a huge amount of money that a lot of people needed to find each week in a recession. And so the bank did foreclose on our family home, and then they auctioned our family home for half the price that it was worth, and my parents lost their life savings, and so we had to move to another state, and it was a traumatic experience at the age of 12 to lose your house and to see your parents very sad. And my father later got back up on his feet, and he learned he would buy a smaller house, build an extension, buy a smaller house, build an extension. He eventually built a whole house, owned another house, and he was a good example for me of what to do when life gets difficult. It's not to give up, but to work harder. So in that respect, it was a good life lesson. But it was also kind of traumatic to have to leave the beach playground and go and live in a depressing suburb and watch your parents with grief about losing their life savings. And I've never trusted banks since that time, by the way. And I've never allowed Nandagiri to get any sort of loan. But when I came back to this area, first time, when I went to that beach, I did feel the sadness, the grief of the separation from the love, part of our samsaric experience, if we will be separated from the love. And I remember I kind of lay down on the beach in corpse posture in yoga and just kind of felt that sadness and allowed myself to feel the sadness of having been uprooted from our childhood home. And yeah, and then so I came back again a few years ago, and that emotion wasn't there anymore. It's just kind of like, yeah, it arose, it stayed for some time, it ceased. And so just this morning, I was wandering around my childhood school playground, and I went back to my childhood beach, and there's a place called Uncle Tom's Pies, and it's still there, amazingly enough. And my friend Tim offered to buy me an apple pie with whipped cream it's the same apple pie with whipped cream that they made 50 years ago. So that was nice. So now when I come back, there's more awareness of the happy memories, because yeah, a traumatic emotion or an experience of grief, it arises. If you give it space, if you allow it its space, it arises in space for some time and it ceases. It passes through consciousness, and with our understanding of karma, we don't have to be contentious with it. We don't have to get angry with the causes of, who did what or why. We just accept that did happen. There is some grief or there is some trauma. Allow the feeling of that experience to arise, stay for some time and see. And some people, depending on the trauma, some people can benefit from some therapy. For other people, if it's not too intense, this can just occur in the course of meditation. Sometimes you come and sit with some emotion that passes through the mind. Sometimes you come and sit. There isn't. It's okay. We're still trying to be aware of the breath. We're still cultivating present moment awareness. And if an emotion arises, we just give it some space and allow it to arise and cease according to its nature. That's at least how I work with these things. And yeah.
Question 6. The Buddha recommended that we look for certain qualities in friends: faith, energy, generosity, ethics, etc. In the modern world, it seems that people are hesitant to talk to each other and often have minds filled with nonsense coming from the internet. The starting points between us are often polluted by cynicism and paranoia. How do we find good friends in this age? How to be a good friend in this age? Thank you.
So I think good friend would be a good spiritual friend, a friend with spiritual qualities, with faith, with ethics, etc. So, if possible, going to Buddhist centers, meditation retreats, visiting your favorite Ajahn. This is where you're going to meet virtuous people with similar intentions, and those people tend to be quite kind and keep an eye on each other, support one another. So, yeah, if possible, meditation centers, temples, retreats, visiting your Ajahn. That's one of the benefits of coming to these occasions with a lot of people. In some respects, it's not as peaceful as doing a retreat at home, but there is some benefit to reconnecting with your Kalyana Mitra when you come to one of your favorite teachers' patinas or their birthday. You're re-establishing those relationships, maintaining those relationships, developing a sense of community. And then you have that as part of your refuge when you need a spiritual friend. And so yeah, but obviously modern people, not everybody is close to a temple. But that is my advice. Maybe move closer to one if possible. That's where you're going to meet the good people. You're going to meet the good people in places where people are committing to cultivating goodness. That's where they are. So, good to see you all. And next time I see you, I'll be back in my monastery. See how the cats are doing. See how the monks are doing. See how the building project's doing. And so I wish you all well in your practice. And please be consistent. And hope to see you again soon.